I'm sorry. I don't know. I guess it would be cooler if it was a Mustang or something.
Sorry. Crack me up, Kelly.
So, you know, they bartered it out. They figured it out. Made her an offer. They had sex. And then when Myers told him that the date was over, he's not having it. So he opted to strangle her to death.
Yeah, that's not good.
So they were at his house. So he carried her to the bathroom where he bathed her body. He put her in 2 garbage bags and then ended up dragging her into the attic.
Oh.
She would remain there until September of 98 when they finally caught her. Yeah.
Talk about stinky.
Yeah. So 2 days later, her boyfriend actually reported her missing. And, you know, she just went in the missing persons file. So his next victim, Gina Barone, was 28, and she was working the streets on November 11th in 1996. So, I mean, he doesn't have a cooling off period, really. It's like, I mean, that's, 2 weeks? Maybe 3?
Yeah.
So she had a fight with her boyfriend, so she was like, screw this, I'm going to work. So after their session was over, Francois claimed that he had been ripped off, so he strangled her in the back of his car. He drove the body to his garage, where he waited until the next day. So she's sitting in his car, and then he bagged her and stored her in the attic after bathing her.
Oh, that's so wrong.
Right? Like, I mean, I guess it's wrong that he strangled them. I don't get the bathing part, because he's not, like, leaving their bodies anywhere.
He left her in his car?
Yeah, overnight. So his whole family's home. He risked them, like, going downstairs and finding that. I don't know. That's not... but then again, they must have been so oblivious. When you hear, like, some of the stuff, you're like, what the fuck? So, and then just 2 days later, on the 13th of November in 1996, Francois would claim his next victim, Kathy Marsh. She was 31. She was strangled in the same manner as all the other victims. He also washed her body before putting her in the attic with the other victims. It wouldn't be until March 7th of 1997 that she was reported missing.
So she went that long without being reported missing?
Yeah. Which is sad. What's that, almost 6 months?
Yeah, that's really sad.
So, unfortunately, I mean, so she's up in the attic. He bathed her and the whole spiel. So the next this one was in January of 1997. So this was Kathleen Hurley. She was 47. She hadn't been seen for about 3 days, so they reported her missing on the 15th. Hurley was last seen walking Main Street in Poughkeepsie. Her missing persons report sparked police to piece the 3 disappearances together. So police started to canvass the neighborhoods a little more, where the people were missing from. They brought out some cadaver dogs in particular areas, which that's awesome, but it doesn't help because the bodies are in his attic. So when they kind of were like, okay, well, we've done all we can, they called the FBI, and at that time, the FBI really didn't have anything they could help them with. But I commend them, because it was 3 missing people within a short time span, and they were, like, right on it. Sometimes, you know, like Long Island serial killer, you know, it takes years for them to be like, oh, maybe there's a pattern here. But then we have another victim, Mary Giacconi, and she was 29. She went missing in February of 97, but was not reported missing until November 13th of 1997. So that's kind of the same deal as our last victim, unfortunately. And then Michelle Eason was 27, and she was reported missing on October 9th in 1997. She was an alleged victim of Francois because her body was never recovered. But police continued. They increased their efforts. All the victims had similar body types. They were like 5'2", 120 pounds soaking wet, dark hair. But most of them, because they were sex workers, they really didn't keep in touch with their families. And the reason they knew most of them were sex workers were because they had been arrested on charges for prostitution in the past. So fast forward to June of 97, there was a man in Poughkeepsie that was arrested for rape and assault. Police thought that this might be their culprit, so that when he was in custody for the rape charges, they did some questioning and things like that, but they looked back at his record, and when these attacks had happened, he was in custody.
Well, I guess it wasn't him.
Right. So, the police made a list of suspects, and at the time, Francois did make the cut. But for whatever reason, he slipped under the radar. So the community was getting super impatient with the police. And it wouldn't be until January 98, that Francois was interviewed by police. And at this point, they didn't have anything that they could hold him on, really. But at that point, they set up a detail on him. So they quickly learned his routine. He would take the family car, the panty dropper, to the psychiatric center where he dropped his mother off for her work. Then he would cruise the streets of Poughkeepsie. And it's worth mentioning that he lived in the same house with his parents and sister. I know I mentioned that before, but that's going to come into play later. And the house was described as a filthy home and had feet of garbage throughout.
Oh.
At one point, the neighbors had complained about the smell, but nobody bothered to do anything with it.
So it's a hoarder situation.
Right. And but apparently the whole street smelled at this point. And we're talking, this is January now of 1998. And if you can, people are smelling things.
Yeah, if it was like middle of summer, it would have been even worse.
Right, because you know how our winters are. So in January 98, police interviewed him again regarding the missing women. Unfortunately, they had nothing concrete to hold him. So after the interview, the police brought him home, and he allowed them to go into his room for a short period of time. So there's a cop in his house. A detective walks him up to his bedroom, is standing in his house. He said that it was horrendous. There was garbage everywhere. There was a horrible stench. But it's not a crime to be a hoarder. So they had to let him go. So police knew that the house was disgusting. They knew, that there was garbage everywhere. Everywhere. So, unfortunately, he had kept quiet for just about 6 months. So Sandra Jean French, who was 51, disappeared on June 12th of 1998. She had actually lived about 20 miles east of Poughkeepsie, up in Dover, and her car was found by her daughters in Poughkeepsie on June 15th, 1998. The car was found about 3 blocks away from Francois' house. But unfortunately for Francois, he was running out of space in the attic, so she was the first victim to be put down in the crawl space. He dug a shallow grave and placed her in there, but she would soon be joined by another victim, unfortunately. So he stayed quiet for about 2 months now, because now we're moving forward to August of 1998, where we meet Audrey Poughkeepsie. She was 34. So, while she was strangled, like the others, her death was so much more gruesome. So Audrey had been picked up by Francois, and he brought her back to his house. They went to the basement, and Francois totally flipped out after they had sex. He proceeded to punch her in the face because he was like, nope, not happening. So she was able to get free, and she ran to the basement door, which to me, I'm like, oh, you go, girl. You got to that door. Get out and fucking tell everybody. No. Francois grabbed her and just started wailing on her.
Oh.
Punched her in the face and the head. Unfortunately, she fell to the floor where he began stomping on her in her face and chest area. So when he saw that she was trying to put her hands up to kind of protect herself, he grabbed her by the neck and strangles her to death.
Oh my God.
But with her, he just threw her body in the crawl space on top of Sandra's, who had been down there for 2 months at that point.
So at this point, he's starting to get too comfortable.
Right. And I mean, this poor girl, could you imagine how scared? This dude is 6'4", and 250 pounds, and all of these women are tinier than me.
Mm.
Like, they're really short, and they weigh, like, nothing. So, for her just to be able to, like, get away, but, yeah, like, he really didn't need to do all of that other stuff. That was just uncalled for. And he shouldn't be strangling people to begin with. So, then we have Katina Newmaster. She would be the final victim on August 25th. She was 25, and she was picked up by Francois, and they were brought to his house, where he strangled her, and then he placed her in the crawl space. Fortunately for his next victim, she would escape and would be the ultimate lead to his arrest. So, September 1st, 1998, Diane Franco, she was a local sex worker, was taken to Francois' home. After having sex, Francois began to strangle her, but she was able to escape his grasps, and she convinced him to take her back to the pickup area. How would that conversation go?
Yeah, how is she any different than any of the other ones?
Right,
Why
like,
would he
dude,
drop
okay.
his guard?
Right, like, no, it's okay, you choked me, but I'm like, I'm not going to tell anybody. Like, let's just, we all mess up. Let's just go about our lives. Like, I mean, I guess he was gullible enough to believe it because he did take her back to the pickup area.
That's weird.
So she got out of the car and she just went for the gas station. But remember, police are still tailing him. They've been tailing him this whole time. So how they didn't catch him with the others, but unfortunately, so when she goes into the gas station, he's clueless and he just drives around. So bystanders alert the police to Diane, and that she reports having been raped. The detectives catch up to her, and she goes in with them to the station for an interview. She quickly tells police that her attacker was Francois. He was one of her regulars. Later that afternoon, detectives went to Francois' home and requested that he go to the station for an interview. He agreed, because he's a dumb fuck who had no idea they were tailing him. How do you not know somebody's tailing you for that long?
He was pretty much fixated on killing people.
I know, but if I'm killing people, I'm going to be looking in my rear view all the time, man.
But that's why I said he sounds like he's getting too comfortable now.
Yeah.
So that's when you start to make mistakes.
So once he got to the station, they just, immediately Mirandized him and placed him under arrest. And then he soon confessed to the attack on Diane. So once they had that, they had grounds to get a search warrant. So here's where we go with the search warrant. This is where everything just kind of gets really messed up. So with search warrant in hand, the police arrive at the Francois residence early September 3rd, 1998. I mean, we're talking wee hours of the morning. They're not wasting time. They're there at 1 a.m. The sister answers the door. They say that, here's your search warrant. You guys have to vacate the premises. So his mother, his sister, and his father all had to leave the house. And right away, the forensics team went right in. At this point, they knew the details, that there were some people up in the attic and there were some in the crawl space. Ultimately, they found 3 bodies in the crawl space and another 5 in the attic.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
And attic, that's a lot to put in an attic. And then if they're in different decomposition things, I guess he had the bags on them, but, when people die and decompose, you start to